In 2013, 19-year-old Bryce Laspisa vanished without a trace after a strange road trip across California. His overturned car was found near a lake, but Bryce was gone. What really happened during those final hours? This is one of America's most baffling real-life disappearances. Bryce David Laspisa was a charismatic 19-year-old college student attending Sierra College in Rocklin, California. An only child, Bryce was adored by his parents, Karen and Michael Laspisa, who had moved from Illinois to California just a few years earlier to be closer to their son. He had a passion for art, a close group of friends, and a seemingly bright future ahead. But in the final days of August 2013, everything started to unravel. Bryce had just begun his sophomore year, but friends started noticing changes in his behavior. He became distant, irritable, and unusually quiet. His girlfriend of over a year, Kim Sly, said he began acting cold and erratic. Bryce was drinking heavily, far more than usual, and reportedly abusing Vyvanse, a prescription stimulant meant to help with focus and energy. His roommates also observed his late-night behavior becoming increasingly bizarre. On August 27, 2013, Bryce sent Kim a text message ending their relationship out of the blue. Alarmed, she called his parents. They were surprised but not overly concerned. That changed quickly. Later that day, Bryce told his roommate he had a lot to talk about, but never explained what he meant. That night, he left his apartment in Chico and started driving south, supposedly to visit his parents in Laguna Niguel, a drive of over 450 miles. But Bryce's journey would take unexpected and troubling turns. Rather than drive straight through, Bryce stopped in Buttonwillow, a small town along Interstate 5, and stayed there for nearly 13 hours. He contacted roadside assistance, saying he needed gas, but even after receiving help, he didn't continue the trip. He just sat in his car, parked in a lot, seemingly doing nothing. He had spoken to his mother several times that day, assuring her he was fine and that he would arrive home later. But his voice was flat, his responses vague. At one point, she asked him what he was doing. Bryce paused and simply said, "I'm just thinking." This behavior was not just unusual. It was chilling. What could have been going through his mind during those long, silent hours in Buttonwillow? And why didn't he keep moving? As the sun began to rise on August 30, 2013, Bryce Laspisa finally left Buttonwillow and started driving south again. He had been stationary for over half a day, and no one, not even his parents, fully understood why. But for a brief moment, it seemed like he was finally headed home. His mother spoke with him one last time that morning. She offered to fly up north to meet him halfway, but Bryce told her not to come. He assured her he was okay and would see her soon. That was the last time Karen Laspisa ever heard her son's voice. Hours passed. Then came the call that would shift everything. At around 8 a.m., the California Highway Patrol contacted the Laspisas to inform them that Bryce's 2003 Toyota Highlander had been found. It was abandoned at the bottom of a rugged embankment near Castaic Lake, almost 90 miles north of their home. The car had gone off a service road near the lake's entrance, flipped onto its side, and crashed into a ravine. The rear window had been shattered from the inside, likely by Bryce himself. His wallet, laptop, and phone were all still in the vehicle. But Bryce was gone. There was no blood in the car, no signs of physical injury, foul play, or a struggle. Just a flipped vehicle, and silence. Law enforcement immediately launched a search operation around the area, deploying search dogs, helicopters, ATVs, and divers. The scent trail picked up by the dogs led them from the crash site to a nearby truck stop, then down to the edge of Castaic Lake. And there, it vanished. It was as if Bryce had walked away from the wreck, wandered off, and disappeared into thin air. The search intensified. Divers scoured the lake's murky waters, while volunteers and professionals combed through rugged terrain, brush, and nearby trails. But days turned into weeks, and no trace of Bryce surfaced. Not a shoe, not a piece of clothing, nothing. As media coverage grew, so did the speculation. Was this a planned disappearance? A psychotic break? Had Bryce harmed himself? Or had something, or someone, intervened? His parents were adamant that Bryce had no reason to vanish willingly. Despite his odd behavior, there was no history of mental illness or depression. He had never attempted to run away before. And yet, the evidence was troubling. The breakup, the drugs, the aimless driving, the withdrawn behavior. These were red flags that couldn't be ignored. Then came a lead. A highway worker reported seeing someone who matched Bryce's description walking near the crash site hours after the car was found. But that sighting was never confirmed, and no one else could corroborate it. In the weeks that followed, more unverified sightings trickled in from across California. Someone who looked like Bryce at a gas station, a hitchhiker in a red shirt, a young man sleeping on a park bench. Each lead gave the Laspisa family a flicker of hope, only to be extinguished when none of them panned out. In desperation, Karen and Michael Laspisa hired a private investigator. They also underwent lie detector tests to clear themselves and cooperated fully with the police. They were living a nightmare that refused to end. Each day without answers was a fresh wound. As the case dragged on, public theories spiraled. Some believed Bryce had suffered a drug-induced psychosis. Others thought he had staged his own disappearance to escape pressure or guilt. More ominous theories suggested foul play at the hands of strangers. But perhaps the most haunting theory is also the simplest: that Bryce, disoriented and possibly injured, wandered into the remote wilderness around Castaic Lake and succumbed to the elements. Yet, no remains have ever been found. A decade later, the case remains one of California's most chilling and perplexing missing persons investigations. Bryce Laspisa's name is still etched into countless online forums, true crime communities, and news articles. But his location, and what truly happened that day, remains unknown. The discovery of Bryce Laspisa's vehicle at the base of a steep embankment near Castaic Lake presented investigators with more questions than answers. The 2003 Toyota Highlander had clearly crashed, but with little to no damage suggesting high-speed impact. The most curious detail was the shattered rear window, which appeared to have been broken from the inside, possibly by Bryce using an emergency tool or even his elbow to escape. But why would he crawl out the back instead of opening a door? Officers on the scene noted the car's position. It had rolled off a remote access road rarely used by the public. This road led to a service area near the lake's edge. There were no guardrails, no warning signs, just a steep slope ending in thick brush. The descent wasn't particularly long, but the terrain was uneven and dangerous. Oddly, Bryce's seatbelt was unbuckled, and the airbags had not deployed, suggesting the car was moving slowly, or had been pushed. Inside the vehicle were all the essentials: his wallet, his laptop, and his phone. Nothing was taken, nothing was stolen. This wasn't a robbery. It didn't look like an accident either. It was something else, and that terrified everyone involved. Investigators scoured the immediate area. Search and rescue teams with tracking dogs followed what little scent trail they could find. The trail led away from the crash site toward a nearby truck stop, then vanished. Searchers combed through the dense brush, the dirt trails, even parts of the lake itself. Divers submerged into the cold, murky water, looking for signs of a body or clothing, but nothing was recovered. The terrain around Castaic Lake is unforgiving. Sharp inclines, rattlesnakes, dehydration risks, and disorientation are common hazards. If Bryce had wandered off, injured or not, there was a high likelihood he could have succumbed to the elements quickly. But again, no remains. No clothing scraps. Not even a shoe. A massive search operation unfolded over several days and weeks. Helicopters equipped with thermal imaging flew overhead. Mounted patrols and drones scouted further into inaccessible areas. Volunteers came from all over the region to assist. Flyers were posted, vigils were held, and media outlets covered the disappearance extensively. Bryce's image, red hair, green eyes, pierced ears, was now etched into the public consciousness. But despite all efforts, nothing brought investigators closer to a resolution. Digital forensics teams analyzed Bryce's cell phone data. His last known ping placed him near the lake at 2 a.m., roughly 2 hours before the crash was discovered. That detail alone sparked even more confusion. What had he been doing during that window of time? Was he contemplating something? Meeting someone? Or just driving aimlessly, lost in his own spiral? Even more puzzling, the SUV's fuel tank was nearly full. That suggested Bryce wasn't running out of gas or trying to make an escape with limited resources. It indicated intent to keep going. So why stop at the lake? Why leave the road? Then came the surveillance review. Cameras along Interstate 5 were checked for any sighting of Bryce's vehicle during the time he would have passed through. Only one blurry image was inconclusive. It seemed as if Bryce had deliberately avoided main highways or areas with more foot traffic. This could point toward a desire to disappear, or a psychological state that rejected help or logic. The Laspisa family released multiple public statements, urging Bryce to come home if he was out there. "No matter what you're feeling, you are not alone," his mother said during a news segment. "We just want to know that you're safe." Authorities kept the investigation open, but classified it as a missing person case without signs of foul play. That didn't sit well with everyone. Some argued that foul play couldn't be ruled out just because no blood was found. The terrain itself could have hidden evidence. Others raised the theory that Bryce may have experienced a dissociative fugue state, a rare psychological condition in which a person loses access to their identity and memory, potentially traveling long distances with no awareness of who they are. Online communities latched onto this idea. Several Reddit users began compiling timelines, maps, and psychological profiles based on Bryce's behavior. A few even claimed to have seen someone matching his description as far north as Oregon. None of these sightings were verified. The more time passed, the more theories emerged. Some pointed to the possibility of a fatal encounter. Perhaps Bryce had trusted the wrong person after the crash. Hitchhiking gone wrong. Others were adamant that he'd staged his disappearance and was living off the grid, either by choice or due to mental instability. But without new clues, it was all speculation. Years later, hikers and adventurers exploring the area occasionally reported possible remains or clothing fragments. Each time, authorities investigated. Each time, the findings led nowhere. In the end, the crash site stood as the last known location of Bryce Laspisa, a silent witness to something unknowable. Whether it was the beginning of a tragic ending or the middle of a mystery no one has yet solved, it remains the most critical piece of a puzzle still missing too many parts. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, the case of Bryce Laspisa became more than just a local mystery. It turned into a national enigma. Across forums, podcasts, and media outlets, armchair detectives and experts alike tried to make sense of what happened on that August night. With no confirmed sightings, no evidence of a crime, and no physical remains, people began building theories. Some were grounded in psychology. Others leaned toward darker possibilities. One of the most widely discussed theories was that Bryce suffered a severe mental health episode, possibly a dissociative fugue. This condition, though rare, causes individuals to lose awareness of their identity and wander far from home. It could explain his strange behavior, giving away personal items, ending his relationship, and sitting for hours in his car in Buttonwillow. If Bryce had suffered a psychological break, he might have been physically capable, but mentally lost. This theory gave rise to hope. Hope that Bryce might still be alive, wandering, homeless, living under a new identity. His family pushed his photo in the media, hoping someone would recognize him. Multiple unconfirmed sightings were reported, from Northern California to Oregon, even Canada. But every lead ended in disappointment. Another possibility: Bryce had taken his own life. But there was no evidence, no body, no note. His belongings were left in the car. The gas tank was full. Search teams explored the entire crash area. Still, nothing was found. That absence of evidence frustrated everyone involved. Then came the idea that Bryce had planned his disappearance, breaking up with Kim, giving things away, refusing help from his mom. Was it all a way to say goodbye? Still, no digital trail was found. No ATM activity. No calls. No ID changes. And in today's digital world, that kind of disappearance is almost impossible. Some believed foul play was involved. Could someone have picked him up after the crash? Could he have been attacked? Castaic Lake is known for its remote terrain, and for being a place where transients sometimes gather. Maybe Bryce trusted the wrong person. But again, no witnesses, no video, no trace. Online sleuths tried to fill the gaps. They tracked his phone records, timelines, gaps in travel. Some believed he planned a meeting in Buttonwillow. Others blamed sleep deprivation or vivance. Each theory explained some things, but none explained everything. His family never stopped. They organized search parties, built a website, hired private investigators. They clung to hope, but braced for closure. They described Bryce as artistic, thoughtful, and gentle. Not the kind of person to vanish without reason. But the years kept passing. Bryce's face was seen on posters, TV segments, and crime shows. He became a symbol. A young man who disappeared, and stayed disappeared. In 2015, a skull was found near the lake. People hoped it was Bryce. It wasn't. In 2019, an age progression image was shared. It showed what Bryce might look like in his mid-20s. Still, no news. Even with modern tools, facial recognition, data tracking, advanced forensics, nothing brought him home. Bryce had vanished in a way that defied everything. Logic, technology, time. Today, his case is still open. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department still receives tips, still follows leads. But there are no suspects, no conclusions, no closure. Just one family, still waiting. And one question that echoes every August since 2013. Where is Bryce Laspisa? The story of Bryce Laspisa is more than just a true crime mystery. It's a mirror held up to our collective fears, the unknown, the inexplicable, and the pain of unanswered questions. For the Laspisa family, this isn't just a case. It's their son, their only child, a young man who vanished without a trace, leaving behind an empty space that no theory, no search party, no piece of evidence has ever managed to fill. In the years since Bryce's disappearance, his parents have remained unwavering in their mission to find him. Their resilience is striking, not only because of their dedication, but because of their openness. They've shared their story countless times, not to sensationalize, but to humanize. In every interview, vigil, and media appearance, their love for Bryce radiates. Their grief, though ever-present, is matched by a refusal to give up. Karen and Michael Laspisa have created and maintained websites and social media pages dedicated to keeping Bryce's memory and story alive. They've used these platforms not only to gather tips, but also to support other families going through similar losses. In that sense, their tragedy has become a form of advocacy, a way to shine light on the thousands of missing persons cases that often fade from public view. But the legacy of Bryce's case isn't only rooted in sorrow. It also speaks to the limitations of even our most sophisticated systems. Despite rapid advances in surveillance, digital tracking, forensic technology, and communication, a young man still managed to disappear without a single confirmed sighting in over a decade. That fact alone has become a point of discussion in law enforcement circles and true crime communities alike. Bryce's disappearance raises larger questions about how society views mental health, especially in young adults. His behavior in the days leading up to August 30, 2013, was a mix of alarming and ambiguous. It wasn't criminal. It wasn't outwardly violent. But it was clearly a call for help, or at least a sign of deep internal conflict. Yet those around him, even those who cared deeply, didn't know how to respond. In hindsight, the red flags seem obvious. But at the time, they were simply confusing. This has led to important conversations in schools, universities, and within families about what it means to truly check in with someone. Bryce's case reminds us that a person can be physically present, even communicative, and still be slipping away internally. The need for compassionate awareness, especially regarding mental health and substance use, has never been more urgent. The community around Castaic Lake hasn't forgotten either. Though the initial search efforts eventually tapered off, many locals still think about that car, found overturned in the brush. They remember the helicopters, the search dogs, the volunteers walking shoulder to shoulder in the heat. The land itself holds the memory of a mystery that continues to haunt. For those who follow true crime, Bryce's case stands out not because of its gore or scandal, but because of its silence. So many stories are shaped by what is found. This one is shaped by what is not. No footage, no confessions, no evidence. Just a timeline, a set of behaviors, a few locations, and a void. As of today, Bryce Laspisa would be in his 30s. Age progression images offer only a suggestion of what he might look like, but they can't capture his voice, his laugh, his essence. That's something only his family knows, and what they miss most. Every year, on the anniversary of his disappearance, tributes pour in. Posts are shared, candles are lit, and the question is asked again: where is Bryce? Not as a plot twist, not as a punchline, but as a cry from those who still hold hope. In the end, this story does not have a resolution, but it does have a legacy. Bryce Laspisa is not forgotten. His name continues to matter. His face still appears in timelines and news clips. His parents still wait. And maybe that's the most human truth of all. Sometimes, when there are no answers, love becomes the only constant. If you or anyone you know has information about the disappearance of Bryce Laspisa, please contact the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department or your local law enforcement. And if you've been impacted by this story, consider sharing it. Because the more eyes that see Bryce's face, the greater the chance that one of them might finally see him in real life.